So, this is the painting. I'll just scooch in here. Is my hair okay? That's so important. Yeah, the painting is finished. I'll just run through the last changes that I made. Not all of them, because I've got all kinds of little tiny tidbits here and there. It's not even important to go through that. As I promised, I would lay a little more light on the snow. Done that. The biggest change that I made, I have a couple of changes in this rock design here. Obviously, the big one was this. Cutting it off on this corner and dropping it down to right off the canvas. This entire mass of rock in the foreground was so boring. It was incredibly boring to me. I would just doze off the second I looked at it. So I decided I had to change that. And this is a change I settled on. Definitely broken rules design-wise to do that. Don't care. I'm still happy with it. As I mentioned before, if you can break the rules and still have the painting design-wise successful, you're ending up with a far better painting than if you follow all the guidelines and rules, because then you'll end up with a very comfortable painting. I don't always like a comfortable painting. I like to have just a little bit of oddity here and there. You know, the odd conundrum, the odd thing that maybe keeps the viewer awake while they're looking at it. Maybe the head scratcher now and then. Not too crazy, but something a little strange. So I felt very comfortable to do this. Now, I'm really hesitant to run something off a painting like this. But to help ameliorate that, I've gone really low with my values and chroma in this bottom corner. And strange as it may seem, this is, in a way, repeated up here. We have a void. And we have a void. Almost the same shape. Okay, I threw my signature in there too, because that helps to support. Believe it or not, even that tiny thing helps. Helps a little bit. And then I needed to break this rock up, because once I cut down here with the blue ice, the blue snow, this became a little bit too strong. So I broke it up a little bit with a piece here. I guess that's mostly it. What I'll do now is run through the colors, I guess. I've done a lot of close-ups, a lot of zoomies on this painting already. I've described the colors as I was going through it. I believe, for the most part, if I've missed something, don't hesitate to leave it in the comments, and I'll reply. I've been a bit negligent on getting back in the comments the last few days. It's because I've been sort of, as I mentioned, taking a bit of a break from this. So, anyway, I'm very happy to have the painting done now. It's going to come and live upstairs with me for a while. If I see something that bothers me when it hangs in my living room, as usual, I might make the odd change, but it's going to be very tiny changes, very subtle changes. So what we have here, is the finished product. Alright, so rather than going through individual areas of color, for the most part, I'm just going to tell you what I have in the sky for color, in this band, in the water, and in these rocks. And they all tie together, because my palette is actually, people like to call it a limited palette, because you don't use any color you want to. I don't have to restrict it, and I feel that if it's called a limited palette, it's almost as though it's a self-imposed discipline. It was when I was learning to paint, but I'm very comfortable with it now. So I don't even think of it as restrictive in any way. They're the only paints that I want. I don't think I've used any cadmiums on this painting at all. Alright, so the sky. Ultramarine blue. Okay, stop pointing to areas. Ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, raw umber, yellow ochre, titanium white, alizarin crimson. Now, obviously there are all kinds of different colors up here, but they're all made from the same pellet. And it's up to you to decide where colors have been used, different colors have been used, and how much of each, right? So it's pretty basic. This band is a bit of an outlier because this is the only area in the painting where I've used exclusively cobalt blue and burnt sienna and a bit of white, okay? With the exception of little chunks here and there where I used a touch of probably raw umber and burnt sienna and a bit of white. Just unimportant, distant trunks. They're so unimportant they've almost just become a breaking up of the texture, or creating texture actually in this distant line. Both the mass here, these trees on the rocks, these trees on the rocks, are really ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, titanium white. Yeah, that's really it. I may have touched, oh actually no, I've touched, did I say the trees or the trees on the rocks? I guess the trees, okay? Yeah, just the trees. Ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, white. The trunks, we've gone into ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and white, okay? A few trunks here and there, just showing. The rocks are raw umber, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and obviously a lot of white. More white here, less white here. Same colors. The water, all the way from here to here. I know we have a band of darker stuff here, but we're emulating some of the sky colors here because here we have this mist. You know, the snow is in the distance. It's picking up more of the light that's directly above it. You know, some light reflecting off of this sort of misty stuff that's coming off of the ice, the spring ice. And there we have yellow ochre. Actually, that's right back there is yellow ochre and alizarin crimson and cobalt blue and raw umber. And then we come into here in the water and we have really, it's just yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, and white, and here we've touched it with more yellow ochre, and then down here we have mixtures of cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and white. And then coming down to these rocks here, we've gone to raw umber and burnt sienna, mostly raw umber by far. Raw umber, ultramarine blue, and a bit of burnt sienna in this band. And for the rest, it's pretty much ultramarine blue and raw umber. Here we've added a little bit of cobalt blue to our ultramarine blue and raw umber, and obviously more white to help pop this into the foreground a little bit, these shapes. So my vision for this painting is, it's very late in the winter. Spring is approaching soon. It's not yet near the time of ice breakup, you know, on the lake. It's really just before that. The ice is still solid enough to walk on, barely. You'll see these lines across here that almost emulate waves, but don't forget that once a lake is frozen over and you get into an area where it snows, there's wind, and that wind creates long, thin drifts across the ice as well. So you have remnants of that catching light in different areas. Hopefully I've made a lot of the strokes enough, you know, multi-directional, with the exception, of course, of these, that it, you know, and obviously you see it poking into the rocks a little bit. that's still some remnant of snow, you know? But basically it's ice. It's getting close to melting, but not quite. Breakup might be 2 weeks away. There was a suggestion or a thought by one of you guys, what about the possibility of laying in maybe some snow in other areas? On a large painting, I would consider it. On this painting, no. I like to keep blocks of information pretty simple. As I come closer, I definitely didn't want to break this up with snow because it would really weaken this, and I felt that because our horizon was quite low on it to begin with, I didn't want to punch into here with any of the snow or ice colors. It's about the painting, not the scene. It's all about the painting, the design of the painting. Had this horizon been up here, and the painting basically being all about this stuff and not sky, then I would have considered it. In fact, I'm sure I would have, introduced some snow into the foreground. That's my main reasoning. I wanted to keep this simple, and this simple. And the painting really is the painting is so much about the sky, the feel of the sky, the texture. It's kind of subtle, but with some degree of strength to it. Anyways, let me step back for a second here. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I was hoping to have, even though the colors that are used in it are quite cold in a lot of ways, I was hoping for a warm painting. And I think it's worked because, even though the snow is icy cold right here, it warms up just below it and a little bit here. This is warm, the rocks are warm. I think in general it's sort of I like it to look austere but somewhat inviting, if that's the right word. So I'll do a quick zoom-in on it, but I think, if you'd been following along, I've done so many zoom-ins on this painting, it's kind of pointless at this point. The next painting I'm going to do is the same size. More than likely, it's also going to be horizontal. More than likely, the next one is going to be done with a brush. And on the next video, I'm probably just going to stain it. So, anyway, there's that. Alright, let me just hop up here and we'll zoom in on a few things. It's not the kind of painting that you zoom in on too many individual articles, because it's not a composition filled with large important items. It's more of I would describe it as a general content kind of painting. But I hope that you can see that the sky is very multi-layered. There's quite a bit of depth in it. A lot of facets to the coloring and what have you. See, those colors are almost approaching the strength of the values on chroma in the rock, but not quite. They fall just short of it. I don't play all those cards until I actually get down to the rock. And there you see the intensity. Brightest values on the snow, highest values on the rock. For the most part, you need to be sparing. You need to use those things sparingly. Because if you have too much of it, the whole thing becomes blinding and there's nothing inviting anymore. Your most inviting areas should actually be just a few dabs here and there. They should be quite small. And yes, that funny little hook down to the right, dropping off the painting. And frankly, I'm okay with that. I actually really like that a lot more than it was. A lot more than I liked it before, because it was just too boring. Boring. Okay guys, very happy with that. We'll see you soon.